All right, so let's talk about Russia's war in Ukraine is stalling on the battlefield and in the corridors of diplomacy. Diplomatic talks are always stalling, and when it comes to Russia, I mean, first it says it wants to control the military, it wants to do all that. They want to do all these things for Ukraine, but none of it makes sense in order to for it to be fair or anything. They make it seem like as if they won the war or something like that. Um, for months, high-ranking Russian officials insisted that a path to ending the war in Ukraine, largely on Moscow, Maximilian's terms had been decided at a meeting between President Vladimir Putin and President Donald Trump. I think in those terms, President Trump knew better than to say anything without mutual consensus with Ukraine. Only Ukraine's stood as an obstacle, but that narrative has unraveled. Perhaps because the only way to get the United States to help broker a new deal is admitting that there was never a previous one. And it's kind of like the truth. I mean, there was never a previous deal. The deal was as if Russia won the war, and that Ukraine was gonna broker security for Russia, broker the annexation, broker promises that only a government that is willing to be that is willing to exacerbate war at any time, and that's it. It's just like one of those things that you don't trust all those red flags unless you're willing to die. Russia wants the entirety of Donetsk to be turned over to them, among some other things. He said, explaining Russia's demand for more Ukrainian territory. After the days of back and forth, Putin conceded the point, saying on Sunday that there was and indeed no agreement reached in Anchorage. The spirit of Anchorage, although it wasn't expressed in any formal document and no one put any signatures down. Anchorage. We discussed certain possibilities for ending the crisis in Ukraine, Putin told his state television reporter. And the compromises discussed were precisely the proposals the American side made to us. And see, there's promises that are happening about the crisis, and compromises were precisely proposed. Anyway, so the Russian leader's decision to bury the Alaska summit with the Kremlin and its propagandists had mythologized as a turning point comes as Russian forces are largely saw on the battlefield in Ukraine. So it's just like, it's so mythical that Ukraine battled Russia the way they have been. They stalled them in the battlefield. They put them in ice and buried them. It was, one of the hottest battlefields that you could ever people have witnessed through the net. I mean, modernity was so cruel during this time. 2026 and 2024 and 2023 and 2 and 1 and 20 were among one of the most cruelest moments of human history. Nothing was more cruel than what happened in that time and to those people. um, the babies, little kids, just so much blood just curdled under this man's hands, and there was nothing you could do about it. I mean, the only thing you could do is attack, but these attacks didn't bring any of those people back, and so you're just psychologically being messed with in that kind of way. Just imagine how hard it is. But these people are trained, to defend, and they believe in something. They don't just go out and kill. They believe that they can save anyone that is in Ukraine's side, and sometimes not anybody, but as long as you're Ukrainian, they get down to business and save you. Political analysts have interpreted the indirect spat between Rubio and Lavrov over the alleged deal as a sign that Ukraine has convinced Trump it can keep fighting. See, that's the thing. Well, you don't ever want to let your enemy know how long you're willing to fight in the first place. What you do want to know, though, is that where they're at politically, and if Russia is willing to admit certain things, like illegally annexing Crimea and the other parts of the country, because they came in coercing the entire country, essentially, and created a lot of posthumous rhetoric and designed the way to make the country protest. Trump probably arrived in Anchorage believing that Ukraine's defeat was inevitable and that sooner it accept terms that better for everybody. A prominent foreign policy analyst who advises the Kremlin wrote in an op-ed in a Russian publication. The goal of Kyiv and the collective Brussels was to convince Trump that the belief in Ukraine's inevitable defeat was mistaken. 10 months after the Anchorage summit, they succeeded in persuading him. So basically, the goal of Kyiv Trump belief in Ukraine's inevitable defeat was mistaken. So basically, they persuaded Trump to believe that Ukraine was going to lose horribly, and it would have. I mean, had NATO not stepped in and gave them weapons, but not only that. I mean, I think Russia. But then you look at the numbers, and there's no way they took it that easy, because they brought in millions of people. But at the beginning, Russia, it could have taken over had they brought everybody in, but they decided only to bring certain people in, and design a war which they can which they can manage, and have a good time. But it wasn't designed that way. I mean, like, you had several people that have no skill set or believe in anything, working for a government that thinks that thing or those people can take over a government and install a puppet government for them, when these people had no skills whatsoever. I mean, driving a tank and taking over a government and installing facets of and civic duties for people to follow under under Russia's command, the centralized command centers and stuff like that. I mean, like that's what it takes to take over a country these days. It's just things are too modern. People have phones. People have cars. There's just too many variables that make everything difficult. Since Alaska, no major breakthrough has materialized in Russia's favor. Europe so far managed to sustain its military and economic aid to Ukraine, and Trump has distracted by Iran. Diplomacy in the midst of hostilities is shaped by their outcome. Lukarov in the balance of power or the perception thereof shifts. The understandings reached at an earlier age lose their validity. Ukraine's push to impose logistical lockdown on Crimea and keeps growing capability to strike deep inside Russia seemed to be part of a 40-day blitz declared by Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky to influence Moscow to end the war. See, these blitzes that Ukraine does is just one of those things they're very good at. They just manage these trench warfare tactics like they've been born to do it, and that's basically it. I mean, there's nothing else to talk about. If I continue to read the rest, it's just gonna go on about certain other about the war and stuff like that. So we've been talking enough about it today.